Throughout my life, I've been trying to answer a very simple question. I was wondering, is that actually possible to interact with the outer world in such a way so that this kind of interaction doesn't bring any harm to your internal nature? Because everything I've been doing, like in different periods of my life, even if I was excited about what I was doing by that time, in any way, this was making some harm to me. Like it might not be really that clear what do I mean by saying that. Like such trivial words as being stressful might be on the cards, but you know, in order to define something that does not bring harm to one's internal nature, again, it's something that you can do constantly for a long time, and still the quality of living is not dropping after. So that like it's totally possible, and many people live the way that they give everything to their jobs, and although they can make solid money after, but still there is no free energy left for actually living your life and that. So I didn't yet answer that question, and I have no idea if there would be enough time within my entire life to answer that. But quite interestingly, at this particular moment, I've realized some essential kind of, I don't know, principles, probably the right word here, describing what I've been doing so far. And for me, like YouTube is sort of a mirror, so I can look at that mirror, like making videos, like about something, making tutorials, making videos about your own life, like I do recently. It's all like it helps to have a look from the outside of your own self, because when you are within your own self, you don't quite understand how that works, and you might have an illusion that you're doing something good or that you're special or something. But if you look at this exact thing from the outside, it turns out that it's either trivial or doesn't make sense or nothing really special. And that feedback, even without feedback, like getting feedbacks from the commentaries, that sort of feedback you can give to your own self is really valuable. So that's what I've realized so far. So I'd like to share this sort of feedback I came up with to my own self, like giving this feedback to my own self while looking into the mirror of YouTube. So looking back to when I just started my YouTube, that was I don't even know, maybe 3, maybe 4 years ago, maybe even 5. I don't really remember, but yeah. So my initial goal was to learn to code and to talk in English simultaneously, believe it or not. And I didn't really care that much, neither about content nor about like the matter of being useful of what am I doing. While the latter is has been remaining for a long time up until now, basically, which kind of answers lots of questions, but still doesn't make any sense. So maybe this particular Code Market Games channel is not really that good example to provide. So I would rather be talking about my another channel which is dedicated to chess programming. Because ultimately what I've been doing on chess programming and what I've been doing here on Code Market Games is essentially the same thing. Although the topics are quite different, like you might say that here on Code Market Games channel was doing something useful like tutorials like how to do web scraping and web development with Python and Flask. Well, you may think that was useful. I actually don't. For me, it wasn't really that way. Any useful, and I don't see any use in that because. But again, if I just try to explain why do I think so in regards to the content I've been doing on this exact code monkey king channel, it might not be that clear why do I think that way. So just a few words in regards to the backgrounds of chess programming channel instead. So like my entire addiction to programming and to coding started with a very simple desire to alter a chess program the way so that it would be playing chess in the style that like I would play or like any other desired style. And it just turned out that in order to achieve that, I was forced to learn to code. And that's the time when I first encountered a programming tutorial, like the very first programming tutorial I've encountered in my entire life ever. And that was a series, Programming a Chess Engine in C by Blue Fever Software YouTube channel. And the guy's name is Richard Albert. So, Richard, I can hardly believe you're watching this video, but if you do, thanks, man. You gave me that inspiration. Yeah, by the way, Richard gave me a nice feedback once after I made a whole lot of my own videos on chess programming, which was really cool. So, before ever watching that tutorial series, it's like more than 90 videos, I believe. It's a really big one. I made my own out of 95 videos on programming a bitbot chess engine in C, which my subscribers on chess programming love a lot. But again, I don't quite see that much sense in that either. But anyway, just to drop back to the original thought. So that was my very first tutorial to follow this chess engine series in C by Richard Albert. And here is the idea, here is the trick. So it sounds really funny, but when I got interested in how chess engines are actually working, the very first chess program I had a look at the source code was actually Stockfish. And just to give you an idea why this was so funny, because I probably never had a look at the source code of any software before that. So you just imagine you have no idea what the programming is all about, and you're so naive that you think that if you look at the source code and maybe you change something in there, that would make the program behave differently. And I had no idea that things like compiling exists that way back in the day. I had no idea. So I just downloaded Stockfish, and I opened the source code, and I've seen that C++ code there, and I was like, oh my god, I don't understand any single line there. And quite interestingly, like this motivated me to start actually learning how to code. And when I mastered like the very basics of the C programming language, not the C++, but C, and then I like dropped back to another revision of this Stockfish source code. And even though I could already like write something simple in C, uh, when I had a second look at Stockfish's source code, it seemed to me even more horrible than the first time, because the first time I didn't quite understand anything, but the second time I had some ideas in mind, like what are the for loops, for instance, etc. But there's like auto variable in C++ or templates or another like builds on top of the plain C, which C++ introduces a lot, and which is like the signature of C++ at some point. That was a total hell to me, absolute hell. So what I realized back in the day that it's next to impossible to understand how a chess engine is actually working. So then I thought, yeah, probably Stockfish is just a bit too complicated, too big, because there was like a dozen of source files back in the day. Stockfish wasn't like Stockfish 14 or what's the current version, I'm not sure. So that was not as big as it is today. But what is interesting that the source code was actually more complicated as opposed to how it looks today. And I was thinking that probably that's because of my experience, but no, like they just simplified the code base by the time. Meanwhile, improving the strength, which is probably the only good thing that I love about Stockfish, right? So I tried to get that from the different direction, from the other side, from the opposite side, and I googled for the smallest chess program in existence. And although the topic itself is really controversial because it's hard to measure that properly, like what do you consider to be the size? Either that's the matter of the binary executable size if you're writing in assembly, or even better in machine codes directly. That's the one possible scenario, and there, like by that time, Oscar Toledo didn't yet create his boot chess, and the smallest program was probably one KZX Spectrum chess back in the day. Yeah. But anyway, what I found was actually indeed Oscar Toledo's JavaScript tiny chess, which was like this size of source file, like just a paragraph, few lines of code, but it was very tight. All the symbols, like for loops, some if statements, and absolutely meaningless variable names. He has been just using like the one character variable names, and he had only like two functions there. So the one was to print the board, to render the board in the browser, and the second was, like I realized much later, was the search function. And quite interestingly, that in search function there were a few arguments to pass to that function. Like now I do understand those are the alpha, the beta, the search depth, and a bit more additional helpers. And the names for those arguments were C, comma, H, comma, E, comma, S, comma, and the big S. So chess. That was really cool. But this didn't really help to understand how the program works. And then I encountered another similar program, which was the um, Micromax by Harmgate Muller, which shared exactly the same style, but he had a meaningful variable name version there, and also a tutorial which has been like explaining how that then actually works. But that was a rocket science to me, complete rocket science to me as well. So although the material was actually that, couldn't really do pretty much anything about it. Like I couldn't make use of it really, which is good. And then I had no other choice but to follow that huge series like Programming Chess Engine in C by Richard Albert. And like it was like, although it's really much simpler as opposed to Stockfish, but for me personally that was like about the same. But it was in C, not in C++, and that was really tempting to try. But like if you have a playlist of up to 90 videos up front and you're watching, just you are not really that patient enough not to follow the entire tutorial, but just to read through the titles of the videos covering like dedicated topics, like how to create a chess engine in C from scratch. But somehow I took a decision to actually follow that. And quite interestingly, that before following that, I was attempting my own tries to actually write a chess engine, but um, I could never complete a perf test because yeah, I just didn't know the exact list of things that one needs to do within his make move function. and without knowing that, like 100% sure, you would never ever like complete that perf test for performance. But actually, that's the way of testing whether your mood generator is generating the proper moves or not, and it just runs recursively. And the idea is that you just like have the number of leaf nodes for every single given position that is available within the test suite. And the number of leaf nodes is a huge number that need to be matched with the one produced by your mode generator. If that matches, that means that your mode generator is working properly. So I finally took a decision to follow that tutorial series, and yeah, I was really excited when I could pass the perf test for the very first time ever. And then when it came to search and evaluation, I dropped the complicated topics like transposition table and like various search optimizations. So I just took the very basic move ordering like MVVLVA, which stands for most valuable victim, less valuable attacker, which sorts the most so that first the agent is looking for the most, like pawn takes queen, and then if there are any moves like queen takes pawn, then they are ordered like to be the last to have a look at, and that improved the performance of the engine significantly. But I didn't really even understand how this works back in the day, because like I did know that move ordering is absolutely crucial when it comes to alphabet search algorithm, but I had no this internal feeling of why that is so and how actually is that working. Much later, I did understand that finally, but back in the day, I didn't really have any, even a close understanding to that. And what was really interesting that has happened later, so when I kind of came up with I don't really want to call this my own engine, but the engine I came up with by following Blue Fever software series. I was like renaming the variables, and I was trying to simplify the code everywhere I could, because again, just like, that was something that made perfect sense to me, because his style is brilliant, but that was just a bit too complicated to me. So then I went through a sequence of rewriting that engine like many times. And eventually, I've simplified that engine a lot, so that uh, with the same strength, which was it was much weaker as opposed to original like Vice engine by Bluefield software, but it was really easy to understand the code and how it works. And this didactic value was something that I was extremely proud of. And when I was sort of ready, uh, like when I had a good enough understanding of how that works, I actually started my chess programming channel that was intended to share that knowledge with people. And I was really like motivated to do that, because I thought that there is an abyss gap between those who is just starting with chess programming and those writing like strong chess engines. So I thought there is a niche where like everyone should be capable of writing his very like simple engine that is playing around 1600s LO, for instance, somewhere around like that. And you can play around with it. You can change the p-square tables in the evaluation function to actually finally make it play in the style you want, what I consider to be the style, nothing to do with the modern neural networks, obviously, which truly allows the engine to play the style you want, but that's a completely different story, really. So I was really like excited about that, and first I made just this simple engine, the array-based mode generator. And then when I had this clear understanding, like the pieces that a chess engine should do, I then started experimenting with bitboards, because again, In regards to the array-based board representation, there was this series by Blue Fever Software, like programming your chess engine in C. So it's not the matter of being smart. Yeah, it's just a matter of having patience. So if you have good enough patience and like take a decision to follow that series, like many people did, and they came up with their own engines, which is really cool. But if someone wanted to create a bitboard chess engine, which was intended to improve the performance of the motion rater a lot, and then for the purposes of evaluation before the efficiently updatable neural networks for evaluation were ever created, it was really important to have these bitboard based point structure representation and other various details in regards to the position, because it was the matter of a couple of bitwise operations to get the entire like clue to the engine of what's happening on the board. Because on the array based one it's really expensive to evaluate. So since hence it's really like, slow and not working. So the solid engines we're using bitboards anyway. It's really arguable whether it should be done now or not, because with efficiently updatable neural networks and with some mood generation optimizations for the array but based like presented by Hamjit Gutmuller a couple of years ago, it's really arguable which one is better to use. And so yeah, again. And the Monte Carlo research Lila Chess Zero type engines is even even more different story. But anyway, just to drop back to the topic. So my entire series on 95, get the my entire 95 video series on programming a bitboard chess engine in C is basically based on a tiny little piece of code by Todd Romstad, the author of Stockfish, which has published a piece of code generating so-called magic numbers. So there is the hashing technique that allows to create a database for sliding pieces with a given occupancy map. It returns the set of the squares of where the sliding piece, like the rook, the bishop, or queen, can go, and that's done in a very efficient and fast way. So instead of calculating those attacks on the fly, which takes time, instead there is just a pre-initialized move database being uploaded, like along with the engine into the RAM. And then when it comes to actually generating those moves for sliding pieces, it's just a matter of a simple lookup. So you can just look up the moves for sliding pieces. You don't quite need to generate those. That's the revolution behind this magic beatboard, so called. So I've spent about 3 months, I believe, to get an idea of how that code works. And I didn't have the code that actually makes use of those magic bitboards like in the mode generator. I only have the code that is intended to generate the magic numbers. But quite interestingly, that in order to generate those magic numbers, there is actually the code that is making use of those, like to generate the actual moves and to like figure out whether the certain magic number is working or not, to serve as the hash key for the pre-calculated database. And like dividing and querying that code for about 3 months, yeah, I finally realized that I can slightly alter that code in order to use it for the move generation purposes. Once I managed to write that code that actually generates moves for the sliding pieces, and after being able to complete the perf tests, I realized that I'm ready to make a series on how to make your own bitboard chess engine in C, which would be easier to understand and to follow even than the chess engine in C by Bluefield Software, although that has been introduced in the array-based board representation. So I was looking for a way how to make a tutorial on bitboard chess engine so that it would be easier as opposed to the array-based one. And the amount of chess engines that has been created by those people who has been following my tutorials is really amazing. I didn't really think that would make such a big impact. So I should probably be proud of that. Well, I'm not quite sure whether I am or not. Like, it's hard to say really. I can't say like 100% sure that I do. I'm glad that many people did succeed, thankfully to my work, but I don't quite feel that sort of satisfaction. Anyway, so what's the reason for telling you this story? You might be wondering, and that's a really good question. So I just wanted to give you an idea that whatever I was considering as the topics for my programming tutorials, no matter if it was like just programming with these complicated topics or some easier topics like I did on Code King's channel, like I'm not even talking about web scraping, like, but some raycasting tutorial which turned out to be quite popular, although there is a whole ton of similar tutorials, but probably not as easy to follow and not as didactic code at the very end as mine. And also, I've been doing lots of things in pure JavaScript so that it's like the easiest way to follow because you can run the code directly in the web browser and you don't have the platform dependent complications arising because I'm on Linux and most people are on Windows. So if something doesn't like people, has been trying to compile my chess engine in C, my Bitboard chess engine in C source code in Visual Studio Code with Microsoft Compiler. It didn't work because it wasn't really intended for that either because like I hate Windows. Yeah, so I was forced to explain then that you need to use the GCC on Windows. You need to use min GW GCC and do it from the command line, not using the Visual Studio Code, and that's crazy. In JavaScript, you don't quite have those issues at all because you run the code directly in the web browser. No problem with that at all. So I did many projects like in pure JavaScript, like the recent one I made, porting the 3D graphics engine by JavaX9 from C++ to JavaScript. So literally exactly the same code, exactly the same software rasterizer. Like the code is literally that's not my code, it's his code, but it's in JavaScript and it's a bit simplified, so it's really easy to understand of what's going on. Although JavaX9's code is also like probably the most didactic code ever after the one I write. Yeah, but since the code I write I can barely call my own because it's always like someone else's idea, but just spoiled by me to make it absolutely impractical, but for the sake of clarity and didactic value. So yeah. So just to summarize this entire thought I'm trying to deliver is probably like another interesting quotation that's from the Java X9 by the way. So in his series on creating 3D graphics engine when he came up with an issue like he didn't want to use the external libraries doing matrices, multiplications, and other calculations like that because that would violate the philosophy of his code it yourself tutorials. But on the other hand, writing his very own library just for a simple project like he did was a bit of an overkill. So eventually he did somewhat of in between. So just refactor the code and he didn't have either library or like some external library, but all those functions responsible for math in the 3D graphics engines was where they were just separated to, to the dedicated functions that has been doing what it needed to. But there was an interesting story that he told. Like he was asking a friend of him, like how to proceed in that sort of situation. So he said, like, I don't want to reinvent the wheel because wheels exist, but on the other hand, it's not quite clear how to do otherwise something else. And his friend wisely answered to that, responded that if your goal is to learn about how the wheels are actually working, then reinventing one on your own is a good idea. So you really should consider that. That was brilliant, really. And when he bring that idea to life. The eventual source code of his 3D graphics engine was really cool, and I really love that. So yeah, it made perfect sense, really. So the reason why I'm telling you about this, because what I've been doing so far on YouTube was literally the same. So I was learning about how the whales are actually working, hence I was reinventing my own for a long time, literally for every single project I did. And here is another and probably the major issue rising here. So I just want to give you sort of an image so that you have this like visual understanding, like uh, the concept level understanding, just to give you an idea like what I feel about all this. So you just imagine the following. So you probably know there's a thing called a moonshine machine. The purpose of the moonshine machine is to produce the home brewed alcohol so that later you can make sort of a drink of it or just drink it as is. So it's cheaper as opposed to the alcohol that you can buy somewhere in the shop, right? But in order to make a truly good homebrewed alcohol, it's kind of really, really complicated, and you need to invest a lot of money in order to achieve the result that would be as good as the alcohol that you can buy at the shop, or even better. So you need to invest a lot, and not even money, but also time and effort, and literally dedicate your entire life to that. Because like homebrewed alcohol is not something that you can do like with your left hand when you're having some spare time. You need to dedicate a lot to that. And this is the key point. This is the very key concept here that in order to make something really good, you definitely need to spend a lot of time and effort and dedicate your entire, well, maybe not life, but your entire energy, free energy to that particular thing you're trying to do, you're doing, trying to achieve that result. And just to give you, again, like the visual representation, the visual understanding of what I've been doing so far. So with this exact moonshine machine, what you can do. So the simplest one that literally anyone can build at home without investing probably any single dollar, just using the dishes you already have in your kitchen, you can still create the homebrewed alcohol, but it would be smelly and toxic. And if you drink it, well, you won't die, but your liver would curse you really, because you would have a headache next morning, and it's not going to be really that great. So, and here, an interesting dilemma is arising. So, on the one hand, if you're interested in the very process of how alcohol gets made, in that case, doing this cheap solution, which is extremely easy to do, like easy to follow, anyone can do it, and like very easy, very simple. So the didactic value. And the most benefit of doing this is you can see the process of how the alcohol is actually getting created with your own eyes directly, very clearly. So if you're watching how this is happening, you are getting the most clear possible understanding of how the process is actually working. But the output of this moonshine machine, the simplest one, the cheapest one, is something that you can barely drink, and you don't really want to drink that because you just can't. That's sort of poison at some point. You still can drink it, but better not, right? And this is my code. So I was sacrificing literally everything for the sake of the didactic value. So again, if we compare this to this moonshine machine, so I've been sacrificing the end result, like it's smelly, it's toxic. You can't actually drink it to feel better after. You better not. So anything but the actual usage. But yes, definitely the benefit that you do realize, you do understand in great details how the process is actually working. And what happens after? So you might be wondering, like again, my goal was to, because if I had no understanding at all, I couldn't really build something complicated, because without understanding the basics, you can't do pretty much anything, right? And you might be wondering that when I did achieve that sort of level one, where I could, sorry, where I could already build something, although the output was like, smelly and toxic, but I didn't understand the process. And you might be wondering what stops you from improving, right? What actually stops you from improving? Nothing really, nothing but my desire. Because when I did realize how the process is actually working, I've completely lost the interest of proceeding. And it's very interesting, that exact 95 video series on programming your own Beatbot chess engine in C. So the request in the commentaries, make this engine stronger, improve this, improve that. So people were asking me to improve the engine in the way so that eventually they can start using it. And I was trying to explain to them that this engine is, although it was like CCRL rated, and when I connected the software efficiently updatable neural networks, it was around 2800, so it was quite strong with that network. Without that network, it was for about 2100. Sucks, but still, it's more than 1600, which I did before. But even with a sufficiently updatable neural network, so it still wasn't really usable. So because the initial goal, why, like the way I've written this engine, like I didn't use C++, I didn't use threading, so it couldn't be multi-threaded. But while all the modern engines are actually using multi-threading to make search much faster, and so on. So the way how this has been built was intended exactly for understanding the process of how it works, and not to use this as the software. And I had many other projects. Like once I did a sort of a GUI to play to Sensi, which is Chinese chess engines, versus a Java using the specific protocol being accepted for Sensi engines. And again, I had lots of requests like, how can I run it on Windows? How can I do this? Why I can't do that? I was really crazy trying to explain. I was really like, I didn't understand why people are actually trying to use my pieces of software like as the end users for real. It was a shock to me. And I was trying to explain literally everyone, guys, this is not for actual use. These are the tutorials. The didactic value that you are gaining while following those tutorials is literally the only reason to for this software to exist. But no one did understand that. So quite interestingly now, um, I do understand that like the excuse I had back in the day was the lack of understanding. Like if I don't understand how the process of, doesn't matter whether how the moonshine machine is working or how to build software, that's literally exactly the same thing on the more abstract level. So not having an understanding how to do things properly obviously prevents you from achieving any results. But you might be wondering, now I have this understanding, so why don't I eventually start doing something for real, so that if this is the software, so this was like for end users to use. If this is a moonshine machine, although I don't do it, my dad is now like researching this topic. So that would be like the high quality alcohol to drink and enjoy, not because you liver instead. So yeah, why not to do that? And the answer to this question is shocking, and it's shocking even to me because I don't want to, and I can't do anything to that. And I don't know. Another example, like this year, the war in Ukraine has started, and in the very beginning of the war, we went away from home, and we didn't know whether we would come back or not. We actually did, and then the territories were liberated. And since we were afraid there would be nothing to eat, and we had some ground near the house, I could put some plants in there and to grow them and to eat them in the autumn and fall. So I decided to try planting some tomatoes. And you know what? So they were when I just put them into the ground. It was the very first time ever I was doing this, the very first experience. They were almost dying, like almost mostly dead. So I had 40 bushes. I planted 40 bushes, and 20 died. Like not at once, but by the time. So in the fall, there were only 20 alive bushes. And they started producing tomatoes. So I was working the entire summer. I was like, sorry, my English gets extremely short when I'm talking about agriculture or anything that is not specific to programming and technology. So I was like doing everything you need to do in order to make this bushes actually growing, like cleaning up the ground, like putting some water, so make sure they feel good, etc. So they were green big bushes with tomatoes on it. But when it came to actually gathering the tomatoes, I completely lost the interest. I didn't care because we didn't like. I could buy much better. Just I could go to the market and buy much better. Hopefully, I had money. But even if I didn't, anyway, I would rather just make some money and go and buy one. So, like the tomatoes that I've produced were only value would have been only valuable in the case if I been making a tutorial on how to raise a tomato. So tutorial works and you can do the same, but when it comes to actually eating those tomatoes, they were not good, and I don't know. Like, I was working so a lot. It's not really that easy to grow tomatoes, but when I did, I didn't really care about actually eating them, and I would rather again like, just go to the market and buy one and eat. Feel much better after. So you might be wondering like why didn't I like maybe the next year I could just do something better to grow a better tomato so that it would be better than the one I can buy on the market. Well, probably, but like I was thinking that I'm afraid of working, like don't want to put enough time in it. No, it's not a deal. Like I did work a lot for free and I didn't get almost anything back in return. But the major problem was I wasn't really interested in that result. Like, I was ready to grow tomatoes for whatever reason, but other than eating them in the autumn. So that sounds weird, I know, but whatever thing I touch in my life, it ends up exactly the same way. So whatever I touch, just when it comes to understanding the process, trying to break down the process to understand it, yeah, that works. But when it comes to the end result, I suddenly completely losing the interest and like, no longer doing this because it just simply doesn't make any sense to me. That's pretty much all about it. And with this regards, I've been analyzing what I've been doing on YouTube so far. So what I've been doing so far can be described in a few words. Like first is simplification. The second is increasing the didactic value, and the third is bringing this all together to make a tutorial. So that was ultimately what I've been doing so far. No matter if this was a chess programming or Qigong against channel, because this internally this process looks exactly the same. And the reason why I've been doing this because I had a lack of understanding of how things are actually working on my own. I was truly interested in learning that. So I was learning that on my own. I was making tutorial as to give something back to the community, basically. But now, when I did like figure out like how a whole lot of things is actually working in different fields, niches, like not only program but in programming as well. Like seemingly like the next level to start doing the real software, to start doing something for real, for the end result, for usage, for people. But I'm so not interested in doing that you can hardly imagine, you can barely imagine how strongly I'm not interested in doing that. And when I'm looking at some successful content in YouTube, and to be honest, guys, I don't believe thumbnails, keywords in the title and so on, like the truly popular videos that makes perfect sense. They are all about building something. And when the guy in the video is building something, that something is actually being used after by himself or can be used by someone else, doesn't matter. But that's about creating the end result product, whatever it is. And people doing that content are actually interested in having that end result product, and they do put a lot of time and effort in order to achieve that, and they leave with that. And the culmination is when they do have this, finally, when they do have this product. And I'm trying to place myself into that position, and I can't really imagine me doing something similar. So I started trying to film my own self, depicting my own self, like in my daily life, some routines that I'm making. And I started making some Qigong videos about my Qigong practice. And quite interestingly, another discovery that I came up with, which is really, I would say unexpected. I would probably say unexpected is the right word, yeah. That the principle behind the entire Qigong practice is that you have a fixed form, and then within this fixed form, you're doing something within, internally. So, in simple words, you have a room full of garbage, and your goal is to clean up. So, by the very end of the practice, of the cleaning practice, you just end up with having a clean room. So, everything is clean and put things in order. So, it just works, and the live and flow, like you can live there, because if there is garbage, if there is a whole lot of things like just on the floor, you can't even walk, so you can flow naturally. So when you clean up everything, you can make use of the room and actually live there, living in terms of flowing, living, like it works. Qigong is exactly the same thing, but it works internally, and this room is your body, and this garbage inside are your tensions in your muscles and tendons, and in your brain, mostly in the way how you envision your life, like the picture of the world is the source of the biggest tension, probably. Yeah, I would say that. So cleaning up means to like tune the values, the internal values, and eventually you just release the tensions, clear up everything, and what is known as chi or internal energy just starts flowing naturally through the entire body, which brings health, joy, and happiness. And just because that's natural, what's natural is working nicely. So it's like you just had a room full of garbage, and then you enter in the room, it's absolutely clean, and you can live there, enjoy living in that room. That's exactly the same thing. But it's not building anything, and it's not doing anything of good for anyone else, because like cleaning is not something that you need to be taught to do, because like if you have this room full of garbage, you know what to do. You just need to go and clean. You don't really need to learn how to clean. You don't need to watch YouTube videos on cleaning, right? So it's trivial. You just go and clean. With Qigong, it's also trivial. The only thing you need to do Qigong successfully is just to learn the form properly. So no matter if you learn this from the Chinese master or from anyone else who knows how to properly do the form, like who understands the technology. So that's just like cleaning technology. You just take a duster and start cleaning the floor. That's the technology. Qigong is exactly the same way, but instead of that, you should move in the proper way. That's it. That's very simple. That's technical. You just learn it once, and then you practice it for your entire life, and that's it. You get it. You're cleaning yourself. So it's just a matter of maintaining an internal cleansly, if there is such a word. I'm not sure. So keep yourself clean internally, in the heart, in the mind, in the body. That's what Qigong is all about. And when I started making those videos about Qigong routines, for instance, I realized that I'm not producing anything. And the way how I do it is not beneficial to anyone, because anyone has his own room. So, like, if I'm showing you how am I cleaning my room, what you can take from this video, well, you can think, okay, I probably should go and clean my own room. But you know this is without watching my video. Like, motivating you to go for a cleaning doesn't make sense, because you know that you need to go for a cleaning. tell you that you can't ever imagine how good would you feel after cleaning. You know it on your own, so you know yourself. You don't really need to hear about this from someone else, and so on. Because like, unfortunately, the modern world of business bullshit, like everyone is trying to complicate whatever topic, and Qigong has been mystified just to make money on it. But if you just go to the like, bad practice, like there is nothing special. It's a very scientific thing, and you just do the forms. You just clean internally, and just your life energy starts circulating naturally, and that improves the matter of your being, of your living. That's it. It's very simple. Nothing special, really. Like showing these forms, well, you would rather watch Chinese master doing these forms much better than I do. So yeah, doesn't really make sense because again, so only those videos on YouTube are truly like successful and genuinely, honestly, like deserve those million views they have. Those videos which depict the process of creation something. I mean, like when a person is doing something either from scratch or not, but actually doing something, getting the end result of that, and that end result is indeed useful, and he enjoys the end result, or he can share the end result with others, or he can teach others how to come up with that exact end result. Yeah, none of that is about me. And I feel really desperate because, like trying to do this on my own, like if I don't have a desire, how can I make myself want this? Like I'm asking myself, if I didn't need to make money, if I didn't need to make YouTube videos for a living, would I ever be doing this? No, I would never be doing this. And that's the answer already. So if you don't do this without all the motivation, but to make it for a living, it's not worth of even starting, right? So dropping back to the very initial question that I've asked in the very beginning of this video. So is there a way to do something in the outer world to make money, to interact with people, to make money, so that it doesn't hurt your internal nature? And quite interestingly, that this matter is the matter of building something, but without having this desire to build something, you don't quite achieve like it. We won't achieve this for real because you just would be fooling your own self. And that's the dead loop. So I'm starting like the starting point, like what can I do for living? And for living I need to build something. And in order to build something, I need to want to get the end result. And when I'm getting the end result and say selling this end result, then I'm going to the initial point where I just got some money from selling my end result, and then I can repeat the cycle over and over again. But in my case, the cycle breaks where I stay just here. So how can I interact? I need to build something. I'm starting building something, but I'm making a moonshine machine producing smelly and toxic alcohol. And I'm telling to everyone, hey guys, this is a big didactic value. It's very huge. You learn a lot about this process, and no one gives a fuck, right? And you can't like sell so smelly and toxic alcohol. You won't even drink it on your own because you just get poisoned after. And the didactic value, well, they say we don't understand it anyway. So, or even if you teach someone this didactic value, the only thing that the person that will learn from you, from me, after following this tutorial, he would be able to produce this exact smelly and toxic alcohol, which he is not going to be able to sell later. So that's quite pretty pointless. So I can sell my understanding, but my understanding is not worth anything. So you would rather just buy a moonshine machine which does a whole lot of things like libraries and programming. You don't quite understand how they work. They're just like the black boxes. But with those libraries, you can build a piece of software which people would be using after because it's based on very solid work from the others. You can just compile everything in Europe. But I mean, this is not something I'm interested in. So the summary behind this video that all I did so far was absolutely useless to people because like given knowledge that would allow them to make their own smelly toxic alcohol doesn't make any sense. This is on the one hand. On the other hand, like, did I have any benefit from this understanding on my own? Well, actually, I did because for me, like, the life is the matter of gaining an experience. So I truly believe that, like, getting here now, being imprisoned in this body, and the only thing you really can do here is just to like gain an experience for whatever reason. I have no idea why, but yeah, that's something to do. So I learned something out of it, but it doesn't quite help. So like Edison said, like I didn't lose, I just found 10,000 ways of not to succeed. I don't know if I can say the same, but yes, I found 10,000 ways of code something so that it won't be the software to be used by the end user. So that's pretty much all about it in regards to my story, guys. So yeah, I'm not complaining at any point. I just wanted to speak this out loud, mostly for my own self, just to understand, like, because YouTube is truly a mirror for me. Like, I'm posting a video on YouTube. It's like looking into the mirror, and then you see in your own self. That's that's how I use YouTube, looking into the mirror. So I don't say that I feel better after talking about this, but at very least, I now feel really honest to my own self, like no longer fooling my own self. Because the worst thing ever is when you thinking one thing, and on the real deal, it turns out that you're doing completely the opposite, and your expectation would never meet the end goal because those methods you're using, they are not ever to like bring you to that state where you can get the desired result. So yeah, let me know in the commentaries what do you think, and if you had some similar issues. I would be really interested to read through that. See you later and cheers.